our AP Lit, and if you'll go to page 316, I'd like to just, I went over these, looked at them myself, and I think they're worth just reviewing. Empathy is not sympathy, so make sure you get it. It's a different word, even outside of literature circles. It's when you can identify with somebody else. The next two we talked about, end stop. I like the definitions and examples. I would like you to be able to show an example. You know, I don't always ask you to do that. Last time I think there were 4 words I asked examples for, but here there are more. And so end stop and jamma, I'd like for you to be able to, you know, like show that, but not just define it, but like this is how it works. And you have this line, and there's no, when it's end stop, it stops at the end. And there's a punctuation, there's an end of the sentence. Whereas, and they got an example from The Wasteland by Eliot. And then in jamma is when it doesn't do that, it keeps going. And I'd like you to be able to show that, not just define it. That's I think that would be important. Epic, you know what that is, hopefully you do. Epigram, we put an epigraph, we talked about epigraph yesterday. This is an epigram, and it's concise, but ingenious, witty, and thoughtful statement. If you ever, and I meant to get a copy of this, if you ever read Pudd'nhead Wilson by Mark Twain, and some of you did, he starts every chapter in that book with an epigram. And then there's an epilogue at the end. So you got epigraph at the beginning, epigram at the beginning, usually of chapters, and epilogues at the end. An epithet, that's not related, but you remember that from Beowulf? We used it in the sense of titles. Like any of those terms back there for Jesus are epithets. They're titles that become names. Like Heavenly Father is a title, it's not God's name. Remember, Beowulf would be called the Earl Leader or the whatever. You know, that became a title. But it can be, in this case, a phrase, or I guess you call it a phrase, sun bright lake. It's sort of an epithet. So again, look at the example. Be able to give me an example. This word eludes me to be able to use it. Eponymous, look at that. If you want to know how to pronounce it, it's the second syllable gets the accent, eponymous. And I don't really feel comfortable using it. Like if we were talking about David Copperfield, he's the character, main character of the book. He's also the name of the book, the title of the book. Hamlet is the main character, he's also the title. The Cat in the Hat is the title, and I guess that's his name. I don't remember much about it. But you would call him the eponymous David Copperfield. So if you ever want to indicate it, you're talking about the book, like Beowulf. Beowulf, because sometimes the students don't punctuate it. Like if you put a line under it, okay, you're talking about the book, or are you talking about Beowulf, the character? You could sort of distinguish that by saying the eponymous Beowulf. He is also the title of the book. These are great SAT words too, by the way. It's not just limited to literature. Euphemism. You know what a euphemism, and I think you ought to. It does have some examples. Like no one ever dies anymore. We pass away, and I prefer go to glory. I don't even say that. I like to say I'm going to glory. But that is a euphemism.
Expired.
Well, that sounds worse than the real thing. He expired, like he's not even human. It's like the milk in your refrigerator. You can't drink it anymore. There are, and this is no joking matter, but people always have said things like, you know, someone is not in their right mind. You know, the elevator doesn't go up to the top floor. You know, the tools, not the sharpest tool in the shed. You know, we have those things. It can be kind of humorous if you're not insulted by them. But those are euphemisms. Instead of saying he's crazy or he's dead, we tend not to like to talk about those things. So we use euphemisms. Do you remember what cacophony meant? I know you're not going to remember a fraction of these.
but somewhere in your head, you might be able to recall it, yeah.
It's like non-harmonious sounds.
So what do you think euphony is? It's harmonious sounds. It's the same prefix as euphemism. Does anybody know what that means? EU, like the prefix, it's probably Latin or Greek, but it's pleasing sounds rather than harsh sounds, which are great words to use when you describe diction and syntax. Explication, you ever heard of that? That's a good word. It's an interpretation or analysis. Expose, usually it's something that shows somebody is corrupt or weak or something. Exposition, that's the first part of the book. And I left out one that I'm going to go back to. Okay, I did leave some, and then extended metaphor. So we need to start on the previous page I'm not going to pronounce this. I think it's French. Deus ex machina. You ever heard that? And I probably butchered it, but I want you to give an example. That's an artificial gimmick to solve a problem. Have you ever read The Pit and the Pendulum by Edgar Allan Poe? He's being tortured by this in this room, and at one point this pendulum's coming down, and it's just about, it gets all down to the rope. It's starting to get within inches of himself, splitting himself open. All of a sudden, everything, like this room is getting smaller. It's coming in on him. It's kind of bizarre. All of a sudden, it all stops. Right when he ought to be dead, it stops, and the room expands. And the author finishes the story by saying, General so-and-so just liberated the city. It's completely unbelievable, but that's this, Deus ex machina. When something happens that's just unbelievable, it's almost as if God intervened. We know about diction, but it's a great passage there. Be able to explain how diction affects something. Like diction creates this mood in Wuthering Heights. We've already read several examples of how diction affects something. Dionysian is the opposite of Apollonian, which these are two words I really never, I knew where they came from, but I didn't know they were words. So those were new to me. I like dramatic irony. That's a really good one, a really useful one. Did you know the example? Yeah. When we know something, Oedipus doesn't know. That's an example. I was trying to think of some other examples. It's in Romeo and Juliet. She's lying there at the end of Romeo and Juliet, and he looks at her and says, "Man, you sure don't look," I'm paraphrasing, "you sure don't look dead." Huh, how about that? Then he takes the poison and he dies, and she's not dead. We know she's not dead. Romeo doesn't know she's not dead. And so that's dramatic irony. He says something like, she doesn't look dead. He wants to say, Romeo, she's not dead. It's a situation, is what we're looking at. And elegy, we should know what that is. It's a poem about somebody who's dead or in honor of somebody who's dead. I would like the examples. Look at Oh Captain, My Captain. We will read that this year. Have you ever heard of it? Walt Whitman. It's about Lincoln. Turn the page. It's got a passage from that, so I'd at least like you to be able to give me a title of an elegy. And I've debated whether to do elegy written in a country churchyard. I have copies of it. I like it. It has it in the title. So I want you to remember at least one of those two titles. And ellipses and elliptical construction, ellipses are 3 dots, but elliptical construction is when something's left out, and I like the example. May was hot and June the same. What's left out? May was hot and June the same. What's been left out?
June was the same.
Was, the word was. And so that's an elliptical construction. We did the rest of these. Did you have a question, Jacob?
What's the difference between elegy and eulogy?
Well, eulogy is a speech. That's what you're actually speaking at the funeral. An elegy is poet. And it seemed like we recently, I think that was my 9th grade. Elegy was on there, and
they kept saying, they kept getting confused, and I had to keep correcting, it's a poem. So anyway, that's tomorrow, and please know the examples. That'll be the first quiz. You're in the middle of reading, and we're finished with the poetry, with the romantic poetry, so a lot of ways we can go. So for the next few days, it may be what seems like they're all related to the test and to what we do, but it may seem like, well, we're doing poetry today, tomorrow we're doing prose, we're doing something else. It's just an opportunity to kind of do some loose ends. I'm going to give you a poem, and it's got a very short multiple choice exercise. We're not going to take it as a quiz, but it'll maybe help you prepare for that part of the test. And then there's a couple of lessons. I'd like to talk about the poem. There are a couple of lessons we can take from the poet. Lessons meaning techniques we can learn. We will read it after you read it. So you read it yourself. Again, take your pencil. You should now be thinking speaker, audience, setting, occasion, purpose, those kinds of things, even tone. Remember, we have about 10 questions that we've looked at. So when you see them, mark them.
Anybody need more time? All right, let me give you the answers. All right, 17. The answer is B as in boy. 18, C. 19, A. 20, E. What does juxtaposition mean?
It's like, it's a difference with, it's a, like, it has something, it's like comparing two things that are like. completely
Did you say
different.
comparing?
Yeah.
It does compare. Can anybody, yeah.
If you put two things that are similar.
And it's literal proximity in the poem, like they're literally next to each other. I think the word also might suggest on top of each other, but we see it like back to back next to each other. And that creates that close comparison. 21 is D as in dog. You know what didactic means?
Teaching.
Yeah. Anybody else know what it meant? You did? Okay. How did you know that? How'd y'all know that?
Dr. Benzel.
You see, this is great classical education, you sharing information from one class to the other. Didactic. 22 is A. And 23 is B as in boy. You need any explanations for those? We're going to look at the poem, but any particular questions about that?
Let's go. Let's go.
All right, let's read it. Let's read it together, or let's read it. Let's see, I don't remember who I've asked, but Noah, would you read it?
Sure. True ease in writing comes from art, not chance, as those who easiest who have learned to dance. It's not enough, no harshness gives offense, the sound must seem an echo to the sense. Soften the strain when zephyr gently blows, and the smooth stream in smoother numbers flows. But when loud surges lash, the sounding shore, the hoarse, rough verse should sound like the torrent roar. When Ajax strives some rock's vast weight to throw, the line too labors and the words move slow. Not so when swift Camilla scours the plain, flies over that unbending corn and skims along the main. Hear how
Timothy is here.
Timotheus varied lays surprise, and bid alternate passions fall rise.
Thank you. What kind of poem is it?
Oh, no. Yeah.
So who said sonnet? All right, Jacob, it's a sonnet. It is not either a Shakespearean or an Italian sonnet. This is Alexander Pope, that if you know anything, I don't know much about him, I haven't read much about him, but he loved to write in rhymed couplets. I think everything he wrote, which was poetry, was in rhymed couplets. So chance, dance, offense, sense, blows, flows. It's not Shakespearean, and it's not Petrarchan or Italian. But it is, so what is, Jonathan, what is the, how can that help us? Like, what is the organization, the structure of all sonnets in terms of its content?
The first, I think it's 8 lines are like discussing like a problem, and then like the last 6 lines discuss like the solution to the problem.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that actually helped a lot here, because the purpose of this is didactic. He's trying to teach a lesson, not solve a problem. So everything in the poem sort of relates to that lesson. By the way, what is the lesson? Sam, what's the lesson?
I think it's that like you have to like I don't know. How to
Okay,
word
one of the
this, like,
questions asked you, wasn't it for the thesis statement, or did they ask you that?
Okay, I'm asking, there's one verse in it that's essentially, since it's didactic, is a thesis statement. He's trying to prove a point.
Well, I mean, when he says the true ease in writing comes from art, I think he means like it comes from like effort and like skill, not just, you know, natural.
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out. A lot of students over the years, and you haven't done this to your credit, you may have been thinking it the whole time. I can imagine you probably, some of you have, but it's just, why we analyze, why we dig in so deep, you know? Is that really there? Did he really intend that? Like, isn't it just a coincidence that these two words rhyme or something? Clearly not. And that's a really good point he's making, that writing comes from not just by chance this happened, it was intended to be there. So that's what allows us to make conclusions. The author intended these things. There's still another sentence, I think, that gets to the bigger point of it. Julia, you know which sentence or line that is? That states the thesis of the poet.
I guess we already said the first sentence.
Right.
So,
I hope you're all looking for it.
I guess you could say good.
Yeah, read it.
The sound must seem an echo to the sound.
And that's correct. That's his thesis statement. Eloise, what do you think that means? The sound must seem an echo to the sense. And the rest of the poem goes to prove that, by the way. This would be a perfect time. I have something I want to play you, and it takes about 2 minutes, and it'll be the only thing you remember. Maybe that's good, but I'm going to play you a song that was a #2 song in the country back in 68, 70, something like that. Because this group who wrote this song never wrote a #1 hit. They had like more #2 hits, like second in the country of any group that ever was. But they never once wrote the #1 song in the country. And when the author or the composer was asked about it, he always laughs at this song. And essentially, he quotes Alexander Pope. He said, well, the words say one thing, but the music says something else. So those two things in that song are working against each other. It's still, I mean, most people listen to music.
Seniors, Mrs. Weirdo will be bringing your hot lunches out to the parking lot, and you can meet her out there to get your lunches. Thank you.
Okay, so we got 5 minutes. So anyway, anybody want to guess what that means? The sound must echo the sense.
Is it like how the words have to like echo or rhyme each other for like the reader to understand?
Well, they echo what he's saying. Let's illustrate that. This is one of the great lessons, I think, of the whole class. If you can get this lesson, then you will be able, it will open up a whole new area for you to discuss the poetry. Look at the 5th and 6th lines. Soft in the strain where zephyr gently blows, and the smooth stream in smoother numbers flows. What do you hear in that? Well, first of all, what does it say? Soft in the strain where zephyr was the god of the west wind or something, and the smooth stream in smoother numbers flows. What is he saying? What is it about? Claire, what is he talking about? What specific thing is he talking about? What's zephyr blowing? What is that? I think I just mentioned.
Fighting?
Well, it says soft in the strain where zephyr gently blows. If you know what zephyr is, and I just told you, then it'll make sense. Who is zephyr? What is a zephyr? Yeah.
God of the east wind.
Yeah, or west wind. But it's a gentle wind. How does the sound, Will, how does the sound of the two lines echo the sense of that? Like this gentle wind, not like we had today or yesterday. It was kind of a little harder.
But you know, a balmy, soft wind, you know, I like those. How does the sound echo that?
Well, it's talking about flows, it's echoing how your writing will be like smooth.
Well, what is the prominent sound of that? Let me read it again. The sound must seem and echo to the sense. Soft is the strain, where zephyr gently blows. What's the predominating sound of that? You don't hear it?
It's like
Yeah, it's the sh sound, the S sound. Go through that and circle every S you see in those two lines. Now we're not talking about words anymore, we're talking about letters. We're really talking about words, but and we can't go beyond letter, right? There's nothing smaller than a letter. How many do you find? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 7 or 8. What does the S sound tend to do? We even say shh. What is the, it's a soft, yeah.
it's like a calming effect.
It is, and we're talking about a calming wind. Look at the next two lines. And let's see if Olivia can help us out. But when loud surges lash the sounding shore, the hoarse, rough verse should sound like the torrent roar. What is the predominant sound in that, and how are they created in that, those two lines?
Is it like before? Cause like chorus and then roar.
But if you take all the words, the general word sound of that line, the other was a soft S sound. What do you hear here? Loud surges, what?
More like a louder.
Is this euphony? We're not quite ready. Euphony or cacophony? Caroline. Loud surges lash the sounding shore. Hoarse, rough verse. These words are more cacophonous. What's the subject? But it's not a soft, gentle wind. What is the subject? Danielle? When loud surges lash the sounding shore, the hoarse, rough verse.
Is it waves?
Yeah, loud waves, rough waves against the shore. That's a situation that's not soft and sweet, it's harsh, and the sound of the words echo that. We could look at this again tomorrow, but you get the idea. And I have this song I want to play for you, but we'll look at it one more time. We'll do that after the quiz, which you're studying for, and don't forget your reading for Tuesday. All right, you can leave. We'll see you.
Oh, my
Yeah.
legs are asleep.
A book. I think they're all the same. There's actually, yeah, they're all the same underneath that little book. Yeah. And but I did record their that. I put it online. So. Yeah, you're welcome. See you later. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Wait, so there's nothing from class
No, just stop reading.
I